Okay, so we have 2, 5. We're just going to mainly solve. We're not going to write, so I don't need that wording right there. So I want you to mark that out for a minute. We're just going to mainly solve two-step equations. Okay, so if we talk about a two-step inequality, two-step inequalities are going to be the same thing. They're going to be equations like we were solving before, but they're going to have a less than, greater than, less than or equal sign, or greater than or equal sign instead of an equal sign. Okay, so I'm moving it and it's not staying on that word. Okay, so a two-step inequality is an inequality that contains two operations. To solve a two-step inequality, you use inverse operations to undo each operation in reverse order of the order of operations, okay? So that's what we were doing. That's how the wording comes. An open dot is going to represent less than or greater than. A closed dot is going to represent less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. That should come back to your mind, okay? So look at the first example. We're solving for x. So we're going to, I'm going to draw my line just like I've been drawing. And I'm going to start moving things away from the x. So what's the first thing I would move? I would move the -2. So I'd have to make it.
I don't always understand.
Okay, so I'm going to move the 2 first. So the opposite of -2 is +2. Okay, remember we're trying to isolate that variable. We're trying to get everything away from it. So if I add 2, that cancels it. 18 plus 2 is 20. My sign currently is that way, and then I have 4x. Okay? And then I'm going to still solve for x, 4x. Okay, so I'm going to divide both sides by 4, and x is going to be less than or equal to 5. Okay, so we talked about earlier in the notes that a less than or equal to sign is this one right here. Okay, so it is a closed dot, and then we're going to shade this way to the left. If your variable, okay, so I want you to put this note right up here at the top. Put a little star and say, if variable, which is your letter, whatever it is on the left, the arrow points to the way to shade. Points the way you should shade. Hold on just a second.
Wouldn't that just be the opposite?
Hold on. So I'm going to get a little bit more in depth with this, and we're going to talk about it for just a second, okay? And we're going to say why this solution is true. Because technically we're saying that x is less than or equal to 5. So we're saying that specific variable, it's got to be a number that's less than 5. So it could be 4.99. Does that make sense? Because that's technically less than 5. Could it be 5?
Yeah.
Yes, because it said it's equal to. So I'm going to pick a number less than just so I can show you how it works. So if this is my original problem, okay, I'm going to say a solution. If you look on this graph, a solution is any of these numbers and all the way down. So I'm going to pick 4. Okay, so I'm going to plug 4 back into my solution. So 4 times 4 is 16. 16 minus 2 is 14. 14 is less than 18. Is that true?
Less than or equal to?
It's less than or equal to. Yeah, it fits. It fits in that criteria. Is 14 less than or equal to 18?
Yeah.
Yes, so it looks like what I solved is true, so my answer is valid. Okay? So come into a minute when we do that sign change that you were talking about, we'll get further in it. Okay?
Oh, wait.
So now, there is one more thing I want to talk about.
Why did you do the 4? Why did you say?
Okay, so I have one more thing that's super, super important. So if you multiply or divide by a negative, okay, you flip your sign. You flip. And so I'm going to make one of these in just a minute so we can have, because they're not negative, but I'm going to make it negative here in just a minute and we'll work it. But we're going to do a few more before we get there. So that is super important. And it will make your result and your answer wrong if you don't do it that way. But let's try a simple one first. So let's do number 1 first. Okay? So we're solving for x. Okay? So my first thing is to move the 4. So it's minus 4. So the opposite is add 4. So we're going to add 4 to each side. It leaves me 3x is less than 21. Okay, so 3 and x are multiplying. So what's the opposite of multiply? Divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And I'm going to get x is less than 7. So on 7, I'm going to do an open circle. And I'm going to shade to the left. Because it doesn't include 7.
I thought it was a closed circle.
No, closed circle includes. Open circle doesn't. Okay, look back up at the top of your notes. Open circle is less than or greater than. Closed circle is. Okay. So I am going to do this right quick. I'm fixing to change this. I'm going to change this sign to minus, and we're fixing to throw down with this one, okay? So let's solve this. My first thing would be what?
Plus -2. Oh.
Not plus -2, just plus 2. It's a -2 already, so the opposite of negative is positive, so it's just going to be plus 2.
Do the exact opposite.
Just the opposite. If it's a negative, we added 2 to both sides, and it left me negative x right here, and 3 plus 2 is 5. Okay, so I have a negative x. My variable has to be positive. So technically, this is a negative 1x. Why? Because anything, if there's a variable, it technically has 1 in it. We just don't write it. Okay? So it's still doing that operation. Negative 1 and x are still multiplying, just like they were. So we're going to do the opposite, which is divide. So that's going to cancel. It's going to leave me x. Now, but my rule up here was multiply or divide by negative, flip your sign. So I'm going to flip my sign. I'm going to go from less than or equal to greater than or equal to. And then 5 divided by negative 1 is negative 5. Okay. I am fixing to show you why, guys. And it's super important. Because if I left this right here, if I plugged this in, it would say a closed circle on this one, and it would be shaded. Oops, nope, that's not even right because I flipped it. Well, okay, here's what's going to happen. Because I switched it, we're going to have to edit the number line. Because I moved this sign, and so we're going to edit this number line. So I'm going to redraw the. Okay, I'm going to restate. I'm going to say this is 0. -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. Okay, I'm going to redraw the number line because I switched the problem. It was the right number line if I hadn't switched it.
Wait, so that's not how you actually solved it, you just changed it?
I just flipped it.
I can see why you
I was
flipped
so
it.
confused.
You solve it just like you normally do. Solve it like a normal problem. At the end, flip the sign. That's it. So don't change any way how you solve it.
You have to solve it like that? You didn't change anything? You just...
Could we
No.
just wait.
So we would do a closed circle on -5, and we would shade it in and then shade to the right. Okay? So let me reiterate because we had a problem with this. I changed the problem. That is not a process, just change the problem. I misprinted it. Okay, now let's go a couple, 1 or 2 more. So right here, we're solving for x. Note the variables on the right side. That changes things, so we got to be careful. So we're still solving for x. We're going to move that 6. Leave us 2x. And then you get 6 right there. So you're going to divide both sides by 2. And then x here, 3 is less than x. Note the variables on the what side? The right side. So you can't shade based on that. You have to say 3 is less than x, or you could reflip this and say x is greater than 3. This is the same thing as that. Okay, so x is greater than 3, we would shade this way. When your variable is, I'm telling that you got to pay attention to the variable. The variable here is on the right side. Okay, so that means you do the opposite. Okay, number 4. Sorry, it's not pulling. Okay, last one real quick. We're going to add 3 to both sides. It's going to be positive 1 less than or equal to x divided by 2. The opposite of divide by 2 is multiply by 2. X is going to be less than or equal to 2. Close circle, shade to the left. I want you to try number 5 on your own, and we're going to talk about it in just a minute.